Hey guys, it's Phantom's Ex-Listener here, back again with another Phantom's Ex-Listener video, and today I bring you Viktor Ex-Listener Part 1 from the series Arcane League of Legends. And if you have not watched it, please go watch it. It is a very good series, fire if I say so myself. So I will make this quick and short. I'm very glad to be back, and by the way, if I get Victor Sanchez, I have no idea how to pronounce it. Editor me put it up on the screen, what I just tried to say. If I get his accent wrong, correct me in the comments or just let it be, because I've been trying really hard. So let's not waste another second and enjoy the video as you please. It all started when you lived back in the lanes or the underground city in Zon. You were always messing around with gadgets and all that you can think of. You were more of an inventor. Your parents wanted you to become a doctor or something that would make Zon better, quote unquote. They wanted you to get a medical license, but you insisted that you wanted to be an inventor or either a scientist. Your parents weren't very approving of it, but they let you follow down your path and make your choices. Once you grew a little older, you thought that moving to Piltover would be the best choice for you. Since you weren't like the other people down in Zon, you weren't addicted to Shimmer, nor did you steal or sell anything illegal. So you decided to pack your things and give it a try. Once you moved into Piltover, it was hard finding a place at first until someone who was also from Zon offered you a place at a low price. You gratefully accepted the place and started to move in. A few months later, you decided to give the academy a try. Of course, you would write letter after letter after letter, and of course, they would always deny you because you were a Zonite. Of course, you would keep on trying, but no luck. One day, you were getting some supplies for your gadgets and inventions, and you saw a poster up on the wall about the academy. You thought it was just one of those make-believe dreams, and you were slowly starting to give up the academy. But once you read the poster more clearly, it said that they were giving lessons, no matter if you were an inventor, a scientist, or whatever you could be, for free. You couldn't believe your eyes. You double-checked the poster maybe 3-4 times until you finally decided to write a letter one final time. You sent the letter down and waited a couple months anxiously pacing back and forth in your apartment, checking the mailbox every day to see if you had received a rejection letter or an approving letter. Maybe 3 months later, you had finally gotten something in the mail. It was the letter back from the academy. You anxiously held the letter in your hands, waiting to open it, questioning yourself if you should, or maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you have gotten rejected again, just because you were from the underground city. But you took a deep breath and slowly opened the envelope. You slowly began to read the letter, and at the bottom it said, "You have been approved. Join us at the academy tomorrow at 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. You couldn't believe your eyes. You squealed in excitement and ran around your apartment. Of course, you had to quiet down so you wouldn't disturb others. But of course, you set the letter down and took a couple deep breaths to calm yourself down from the excitement you had just received. The next day, you had gotten ready, making sure you looked as appealing as the social standards would like you to look in Piltover, and you would make your way over to the academy, holding your books to your chest anxiously so you could arrive to your first few classes. Of course, you have gotten a few nasty stares or dirty glares from other people in Piltover that were also attending the free classes at the academy. But you shrugged it off and just held your head up high because you were also part of the program. As you made your way in, you would see Professor Heimerdinger. He, of course, was rambling about inventions and how magic could possibly not exist, and classic Heimerdinger just rambling on and on about things he liked. You would sit there and listen for quite a while until, finally, someone showed up. It was Professor Tallis, Jace Tallis himself, the man of progress, also known as the Golden Boy of Piltover. Pause, take a sip of this monster. Not sponsored, by the way. He would then clap a few times, of course, letting out a humorable laugh at Heimerdinger's rambling. Heimerdinger would soon stop rambling once he saw Tallis himself. Jace would say, "Attention all students that are attending the academy today. I'm very grateful that you have decided to enter this program and join our classes. No matter what you are always accepted here. I see a few new faces I've never seen around here. Just know, you're welcome. Take your seats, and class will begin very soon." You took your seat anxiously, your leg bouncing up and down in anxiety, until you noticed someone else took a seat next to you. He didn't look like a student at all. He looked like a teacher or a professor or something of some sort at the academy. You paid no attention to it though, and mainly focused on your classes since you didn't want to fail the first few classes you had just arrived. After class, you would make your way down the hall, only to notice a laboratory. Of course, your curiosity got the better of you, and you made your way through the laboratory, seeing all the things you could ever imagine. Inventions, gadgets, you name it. You were there exploring, of course, cautiously not touching anything because you knew it was probably somebody else's. You were looking around, of course, being a little nosy, but soon you would hear a faint knock on the metal doors you had just walked through. You would turn your head around, and as you opened your mouth to apologize, the man cleared his throat and said, "May I help you, perhaps? I see you have taken interest in the things in my laboratory. Of course, I don't mind you snooping around, but next time make sure to ask or read the label on the door, please," the man would say with a faint smile, before you embarrassedly shook your head and apologized. Oh, how rude of me. I'm Viktor. What is your name? You would introduce yourself, and now you knew his name, Viktor. That was the guy sitting next to you in class. Weird. He was a scientist? An inventor, perhaps? You didn't know, but why was a guy his age sitting next to you in class? You shook it off, of course, thinking maybe he was just monitoring the class, seeing if anyone was paying attention. You would ask him if any of those things were his and if he was working on something. He would smile slightly and say, of course. I've been working on a couple things. Not much. Just a few gadgets here and there, and not much. Me and Jace have been trying our best," he said as he looked down at the blueprints that he had set down on his workbench. Then it clicked in your head. Jace? Him? They worked together? Maybe. You thought it was impressive that Jace Tallis, the man of progress himself, had a lab partner? I mean, it kind of made sense. Maybe he needed a little help with all his inventions and stuff that he came up with. So, I see you have taken interest in the classes. I'm wondering, do you take interest in any scientific approach or lab stuff? You know, I'm sorry for coming off as too strong or forward. In my opinion, I'm just being polite or making small talk. The man would say to you as he looked at you directly in the eyes. You thought for a moment before responding that yes, you did take interest in those sorts of things. Ah, I see. There's this extra laboratory that nobody really uses here in the academy. It may be a little dusty from all the years of no usage and nobody being around, but I would like to tell you that maybe that laboratory could be yours one day. I don't know. I would probably have to talk to Jace or Professor Heimerdinger himself. If that's what you're interested in, of course. He said, waving his hands around, gesturing and stuff like that, as he held onto his cane with the other hand. Of course, you would nod your head excitedly, not wanting to give too much enthusiasm, but he could notice it anyways. Well, I see we have struck a deal. How about you take the laboratory while taking the classes, and maybe, just maybe, might give you a few ideas, he said with a slight smile before sitting down at his workbench with his cup of coffee. Of course, since you didn't want to be a burden or a bother, you would walk out, give him a wave before saying your goodbyes and going back to your apartment. You couldn't believe it. Not only did you enter the classes of the academy, you had just gotten yourself a laboratory. Could things get any better? You thought to yourself, or maybe you were just dreaming. Of course, as you set your things down on the table, you would pinch yourself in the arm only to say, ow! You exclaimed it softly before thinking to yourself, okay, maybe this isn't a dream. After all these years of living in Piltover and being rejected and judged and being seen as different, you had finally been accepted by maybe one or two people. You didn't know if Talus himself accepted you or if he was just being nice in front of the public, but you saw Viktor differently. It's like something had clicked between you both within that small little interaction of yours. You didn't think too much of it. You just thought to yourself, maybe he was just being nice. Maybe he's nice to everybody. Or maybe just me because I'm different. As you set off to bed, the next day, of course, you would get ready, brush your teeth, do your morning routine, and set off to the academy. But you would see Viktor waiting at the gates for you. Ah, I see you've arrived. I'm here to tell you that, yes, Talus has accepted that you may take over the laboratory that nobody has really used before. Just please be careful with some of the equipment because it may be a little rusty and, well, it may fall apart easily. So, he will be taking care of that very soon and replacing it with new equipment. Sorry for taking much of your time. I know you have to head to class, so go ahead. He gestured his hand for you to come inside, and so you went. You paid attention to your classes, taking notes here and there. Professor Heimerdinger would ramble his little head off as much as he could sometimes when Jace would pause to write on the board. You would sometimes chuckle at Professor Heimerdinger's rambling. He would look at you in the back and give you a slight smile behind this little fluffy mustache. You noticed his smile and kept on smiling. After the classes, you would head on over to the laboratory that Viktor had told you about. Of course, it was a little dusty. You would probably cough or sneeze a few times due to the allergies you had. But it looked pretty good, even though it was in rough shape and had a few rough edges here and there. You would set your books down and start looking around at the old equipment, finding a few old blueprints about such thing called Hextech. You noticed that both Victor's name and Jace's name were on the blueprints. Maybe this old laboratory were theirs back then, and now it was all yours. You felt honored having a laboratory all to yourself. Not only that, it was you felt honored having a laboratory all to yourself. Not only that, it was owned by two of the people known in Piltover to be two brilliant minds that thought alike very much, Victor and Talus himself. You would hear a faint tapping against the floor before you turned your head over, only to see Victor once more. I see you like the laboratory. May I know what you're looking at there? He said, gesturing over to the blueprints. You would say that they were blueprints about such thing called hex tech. He would let out a soft sigh and say with a slight smile, "Ah, the good old days where me and Jace would sit at this old laboratory and talk about such thing as hex tech. We never gave up on the idea, of course, but it's a work in progress, let's just say. If you take any inspiration from it, then I would say give it a shot. Just make sure not to sleep in the laboratory. I would not recommend it much. I speak from experience," he would say as he looked down at the old equipment and all the memories that he made in that laboratory, despite all the rough nights and stressful nights and days where he would spend time restlessly on his workbench trying to come up with new ideas and inventions for hex tech. Well, I suppose you should get started on something. I suggest something small. If you're into anything like space and stars and constellations, I would recommend maybe a little telescope or maybe a compass. I don't know. And if you're into plants, you could maybe try to make one more vibrant, maybe color changing. I've done such things myself, but I see that you have a lot of potential. Very much, actually. I can just tell by your body language, the way you speak to Jace himself and Professor Heimerdinger and all that. I am a man of my word. I may come off as cold and distant at times, but do not think that I am being nice or trying to seem nice just to you. I know what it's like to be seen as different and being an outcast towards the public. But all I want to say is that you have quite the potential, and I would like for you to keep going down that path. He said as he tilted his head slightly, gesturing over towards the workbench that was quite dusty, but it needed a little cleaning. Your face would flush slightly at his words, seeing that somebody actually believed in you, seeing the potential you had in that little brain of yours. It made you feel honored, appreciated, maybe even pampered at that point. You tried not to overthink it and gave him a slight nod with a smile. Well, shit. Well, I will no longer interrupt you. The academy doesn't really close if you ask me, but students usually get out at 8:30-ish. But if you wish to stay longer to clean out your laboratory, I understand, and I will address Talus about it. Well, it was good chatting with you. I'll see you much later, or maybe we shall cross paths again. Who knows? He would walk out the door, giving his hand a slight wave to you before walking down the hall. The slight tapping of his cane could be heard before it fainted away. You felt this slight flutter in your chest, this warmth that you've never really felt before besides with your parents when they gave you a compliment or they would give you a pat on the back for doing something good. But it felt different. It wasn't that warmth that you felt with a family or even close ones. It felt different. But you pushed it aside and began to clean out the dusty old laboratory that you had just gotten your hands on. Much later, you weren't much of a coffee drinker if you had to say so yourself. Or maybe you were. You would get yourself a cup of coffee, the way you just liked it, and you would sit down on your workbench, tapping your pen impatiently to see if any ideas would come to your head. You've been so focused on classes and your apartment and life lately that the ideas just wouldn't come anymore. You've had so many ideas when you were younger and little prototypes that you would make. It was like everything slipped away once you focused on your studies. But you would push that aside and open up your notebook from almost a decade ago and look at the prototypes you had made as a kid or a teenager. You would start sketching out those prototypes once again on some blueprints, but with a few upgrades. Of course, you would find some old supplies around the laboratory. Of course, they were a little dusty, maybe a little rusty, but you could work with it. After a couple hours, let's say 11 p.m., you were still there in your laboratory on your clean workbench. The rest of the laboratory was a little bit dusty itself, but at least you had a clean workbench. You would make yourself a small but packable compass. Just like Viktor had said, start out small and then go bigger. It was a little wacky at first until you started adding a couple things and it started to work. North, south, east, west, you name it. It went in all directions no matter where you pointed it. You dropped it once just to see if it would break. No, it still kept working. Little did you know there was somebody watching you from the doorframe with a little smirk on his face. As you finally noticed his presence, your body would jolt up slightly at the surprise. Ah, I see you have already gotten your hands to work. I told you you had potential. May I see what you have worked on so far? He'd reach his hand out so you could hand him the compass so he could take a look at it. It's... I'll say so myself. It has a few rough edges, but it works. I mean, prototypes always start out a little rough, don't they? He looked up at you, his eyes soft. You heard from other people while they were whispering in class that Viktor was cold, distant, and he didn't talk much. He didn't like to be around people, said people, but towards you he seemed soft, kind, and even friendly if you had to put it in your words. I like it. Maybe mixing it with a few hex crystals could give it a little boost, but I'm not sure. I wouldn't want to mess up your prototype, but what else have you been working on? Of course, it's only been a couple hours, but I know you have millions of ideas in that head of yours. I see you have a couple sketches in your notebook. Mind if I take a look? He said, looking over at your notebook. Of course, you gave him a nod and allowed him to look at your notebook at prototypes you made as a teenager that you've wanted to build so badly but never had the supplies to due to low supplies or overpriced things in the undercity. I see. They're very good if you ask me. Did you make these at a very young age or just now? You would tell him that you made them when you were younger but never had a chance to actually make anything. Well, now you have the chance to make these. And maybe it'll make a change to Piltover, or maybe not. Or maybe they'll just be little projects of yours that you enjoy making. Like, for example, I once made a little tiny mouse as a prototype to see if, I don't know really. I just made a small mouse for no reason. I just wanted to tinker for a little bit, just to get my mind off some things. And if that's what you're up for, I won't judge you a little bit for it. Sometimes inventors have their moments where they just want to do something for their own, not for their own gain, but just to take their mind off some things. And I approve of that, and I approve of your work. So, good luck. I wish you well. Try not to stay in the lab for too long, okay? Before they turn the lights off and they accidentally close your door in your own laboratory and you get stuck in here for 24 hours. You would tilt your head slightly, asking, why would he say that? Oh, I sort of speak from experience. I thought Jace would come back into the laboratory one time when he had actually fallen asleep in his office. Then I had accidentally gotten locked in our own laboratory and I had to stay there until morning. Wait, no. Well, I speak from experience, sort of. I thought Jace would come back into the laboratory when he had I speak from experience, sort of. I thought Talus would come back into the laboratory, but actually he had fallen asleep in his office. So then I got locked in the laboratory until dawn. So I would recommend around midnight. Midnight and 30 minutes would be okay for you to get out. Unless you're trying to get out earlier to get some rest for classes tomorrow. He would give a slight smile as he handed your compass back to you. His hand glazing your hand. Shit. He would give your compass back to you. His hand grazing your hand at the slightest. Your body felt a slight, electricity run through it. You've never felt like gentle touch in your life. It was rough in the Undercity, but it was new to you. You were willing to give new things a try, but with a person, you weren't so sure. Well, I'll see you around again if we cross paths again for a third or fourth time. You never know. Later on, you would soon leave your laboratory, only to see Viktor once again. Well, you two didn't speak, but only made eye contact as you made your way down the hall. He was speaking to Jace, something about Hex Tech. You couldn't quite catch it, but he gave you a soft smile as you walked down the hall. It made you feel things in your chest again. You couldn't put your finger on it to name what those things in your chest that you were feeling were. So you just push the feelings down and go right back to your apartment. You would set your books down, in an annoyed way this time. You would let out a huff of annoyance and lay down in your bed, with your arms over your head, not knowing what to think. All that was on your mind at the moment weren't even your inventions or your classes or even Heimerdinger's yappity yap. No, it was Viktor. There was just something about him, and he kept flooding your mind back and forth no matter how hard you tried to push him out of your mind. It was just there. His ember eyes, his smile, his voice. Then you gasped and jolted up and sat up in your bed and just ran a hand through your hair and thought to yourself, no, I can't. I have to focus on classes, on my things. I can't just throw it all away because I'm falling in love with some person I just met 3 days ago. You would stumble out the word love. You never knew what love was, really. You saw love as more like a crush, and then it would all go away. As you took a couple deep breaths and thought to yourself, maybe I just admire him. Maybe I'm just a really big admirer. It's not the L word, you thought to yourself. The next morning, you didn't have classes. You had more time to yourself to think about your inventions until something slid through your door. It was either a letter, a note, or something from the mail. It looked like mail, so of course you would open it, maybe thinking it was bills, taxes, anything else. It was actually a letter from, you guessed who, Viktor. The letter read, "I'm sorry to be bothering you at such a time, but I know it is your free time and that you need some time for yourself after all those stressful classes. But you may take my invite as friendly or not. If you would like to join me for a cup of sweet milk or tea or coffee, whatever you prefer, at your place or my place or fuck, I messed it up." It was a letter from, you guessed who, Viktor. You read the letter, but you heard his voice in your mind, like he was speaking to you in your own head. And the letter said, "Hello, it's Viktor. I would like to invite you for a cup of whatever you'd like. I personally like sweet milk. I would like to invite you for a cup of coffee at my place at maybe 3 or 4 p.m. Whatever time you prefer. I would like to discuss with you some things about Hextech, so you could know what it is, and maybe some of your own inventions and gadgets of your own. Maybe I could give you a few ideas. Viktor." You would feel your face flush again. That flutter in your chest would soon come back. You held the letter tightly before setting it down so you wouldn't rip the paper. You took a few deep breaths, thinking to yourself, there it is again. There it is again. That same feeling. Is he hitting on me? Is he trying to ask me out? No. Let's not think that way. Let's just kindly accept his offer. Maybe he's just trying to partner up with me. Just like Talus. So you would kindly accept and go over to his place. As he opened the door for you to his place, he would welcome you and give you a soft smile. You two would sit down and you would have a cup of coffee or tea, whatever you preferred, and he would have a cup of his favorite sweet milk. Of course, you two would discuss a few things until you both went to reach out for the sugar and accidentally had your hands touch each other. He would chuckle it off like it was nothing, but of course, you would feel that same flutter in your chest. You stared at your hand for a couple seconds before letting it fall down to your side once more and smiling it off like nothing happened. So, what have you been up to lately? I know it's only been maybe a day or two, but I just want to know how you're doing. That nothing stressful is going to your head because of your classes. I hope Professor Heimerdinger or Talus himself isn't stressing you out too much. Yeah? He would tilt his head slightly as he asked you the question. You said no, everything's been fine. Why do you ask? Oh, nothing. Just some students find it hard to focus in their classes or just they can't handle it. You're one of the first few that can actually handle those two in the same The same living space, I would put it that way. Just a couple of hours of rambling and barely learning everything because of Professor Heimeringer and his constant ramble. But I bet you enjoy it. Or maybe not. Maybe you're just there to learn. I personally don't enjoy it myself, but Jace does. That's kind of what matters. Hmm? You would chuckle slightly and nod your head. Well, shit. Okay. Well, I know it was sudden that I all of a sudden invited you for a cup of coffee, but I hope you don't mind me asking, but would you ever like to have another cup of coffee soon? I know it is quite sudden. You can say no if you want to. I personally enjoy your company. You're quiet and sweet, and I have no idea. I just personally enjoy being around you, if I'm being completely honest. If I may say so myself, I'm not quite open with anybody. Besides Dallas himself sometimes. I am more secluded and, like people say, I am cold and distant. But with you, I feel a little different. I feel like we may understand each other and our struggles and everything else. I mean, you are from the Undercity. As the last sentence finally processed through your head, your eyes widened slightly and you set your cup of coffee down, asking him, "How did you know?" He would say, "I saw it in your records." And if you may ask why was I looking at your records, it's because we always have to double check some report cards or some background check if you have any criminal history, all that crap. Of course, you forgot they do background checks. But if I may say so myself, you're one of the few Zonites to join the academy that don't actually cause any trouble or isn't here to just take for their own gain. It's like you actually want to help others. You would nod and of course agree that other people from Zon or the lanes were only here for their own gain, not to help anybody out. Of course, some people had their reasons to come to Piltover for their own gain. Maybe they were trying to help other people out from Zon, but others were only there for greed. After an hour or two, maybe 3, of you and Viktor chatting and rambling along of your interests and things that you liked, the time had come for you to go back to your apartment. As Viktor led you down to the front door, he would give you a gentle pat on your shoulder before his hand slid down back to his side. "Well, I suppose we'll see each other soon. I hope you have a great rest of your day." Yeah. He said quietly. It was almost like he was too embarrassed to even speak, that you were leaving so soon. In his opinion, it was too soon. His hand would slightly graze against yours once again, almost like the time where you were trying to reach for sugar and his hand accidentally touched yours since you were reaching for the same thing. It was almost like he was doing it on purpose now. Almost like he was trying to get your attention, or maybe get you to stay. You would smile softly before making your way back to your apartment. You thought to yourself, was he doing it on purpose? Was he trying to get you to stay? Or was he just being a little too nice? You didn't know, so you just shrugged it off. You would lay in bed, letting your thoughts flood over your head. But most of your thoughts were just about him, over and over again. As much as you tried to flood your thoughts with something else, maybe something of your interest, it's like he always kept coming back and popping right back in. You didn't know what to do, so you just slept it off. As the days went by, classes, laboratory, same routine. But there was one constant topic in your mind. You guessed it, Viktor. Of course you wanted to see him again, in a platonic way. But there was a side of you that didn't see it as much as platonic as you wanted it to be. The way his hand grazed against yours when you went over to his place, that didn't feel like an accident. It felt like you wanted it to happen. You tried not to overthink it and just focus on your classes. But your classes were getting harder to focus on as your thoughts would flood with Viktor. Well, at least you weren't failing. Or at least you thought. Your grades had maybe downgraded a little bit since you were barely paying attention. But of course, Professor Heimerdinger would give you extra credit just for showing up. You'd make your way to your laboratory and distract yourself with prototypes and such. Once more, you would hear a gentle knock on your laboratory's door. You would quickly look over to see a familiar face. Viktor himself. You would just smile at him and go back to your sketching and your notes. He would make his way over to you, his cane tapping faintly on the floor, before he would unexpectedly hold your chin and gently yet forcefully make you look at him. I see you haven't been getting much sleep. May I ask why? You have dark circles under your eyes, like you haven't been sleeping peacefully. Is it anxiety, or is it the stress from the classes? I can ask Talis to give you a break if that's what you wish. Your face would flush like a rose as he held your face unexpectedly without permission, but honestly, you didn't mind. He would soon let go of your face and let his hand fall down to his side. He would look over at your sketches and your notes and smile softly before saying, "Would you mind if I took a seat next to you?" Of course, you would allow him to take a seat next to you as he observed what you were doing, your notes, your sketches, but knowing that you had someone watching you, maybe admiring you, it made it hard for you to focus or even do anything else. Viktor would smile slightly and say, "Am I distracting you or interrupting?" You would shake your head and say, No, you're not, of course not." "Are you sure? I can leave if you want me to." You would look at him and say, "No, it's fine. I enjoy your company." You had no idea you had just said that. It just slipped out. "Oh, you enjoy my company, you say. I appreciate that," he said with a slight smile. Of course, your face would flush once more, knowing that you just had said that out loud. But the night would end, or the night would go on, with you and Viktor chatting along in your laboratory. And that's all for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe if you want to. I'm sorry that this video took so long, and honestly, I messed up a lot of times. There are a lot of bloopers. Maybe I'll upload the bloopers, but it took a lot. It was a little stressful to come up with a story on the spot, but I will keep my word that I don't do scripts and I just freestyle. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!